92, 93. Then we came to SARS and the global alert on SARS, which called on countries to buy materials and drugs, etc., and also the Zika epidemic that was in our neighboring country, Brazil. All of these led to the Ministry of Health being on high alert and purchasing. I'm not aware in that period that the procurement regulations were breached and were pointed out in the Auditor General's report.
Yes, I believe you have to proffer a comment based on what the Madam Chair, I didn't hear a question in that, Could you repeat it if you did? Ask a question.
One of the questions was that with the CDC contracts, why weren't they standard contracts that included key details as pointed out by the Auditor General's report? Secondly, why were the penalty clauses which existed in some contracts as stated by Mr. Watkins, why were those not invoked as the non-delivery or late delivery led to this situation where there were not enough PPEs, for example, in the system, even though large amounts of money were spent to procure them?
Go ahead, Ms. Member Watts. I think the latter question is for you.
So to answer the latter question from the honorable member, I can just, what we have found based upon the discussions with the team members at that time, it is not clear whether the circumstances should be the only reason for late deliveries or contract performance at that time. What we can say is that currently, and when I subsequently took over during the pandemic, we aggressively and continue to aggressively hold suppliers accountable for delivering on time. However, there are exceptions that was of global in nature. So we cannot fully say, from my opinion and observation, that the pandemic should be the only reason for these suppliers not delivering or performing. As per the contract requirement, there seems to be that there would have been some level of maybe lack of attention to properly engage and hold the suppliers accountable as well.
You can agree that the COVID had disrupted the entire global chain with regards to supply and logistics with regards to making those supplies arrive on time as well, globally.
But Chairman, can I just comment? PPEs are standard in the Ministry of Health and public health institutions. PPEs were not specific to COVID. PPEs are standard wear in certain situations in health facilities, and supply should have been in the
question has to be in line with the supply and the contract, what the contract asked for. And if the PVP was a part of the contract, then it is a response that caters for that. Go ahead, Piers.
At different times during the pandemic, there were different challenges. As I said earlier, during that period of time, depending on the nature of the contract, if it's a PPE contract, we cannot prove exclusively that the reason for late deliveries was solely because of the pandemic. There may be elements of, maybe lack of management. But some points during the COVID pandemic, there were global shortages, especially for masks and PPEs, where there were piracy between Canada and Europe and so forth. So there were periods where they were hard to get, but I cannot clearly say that is the only reason for these contracts being poorly performed.
Well, based on the report and its findings, it spoke to the fact that there were late arrival of the PPE, which is as a result of the contract that was signed. So the fact that it arrived late, then it has to be with regards to where it was being supplied from, because it was a contract signed for it to be supplied from a different destination and it arrived late. So one therefore can assume that the global issue with regards to the supply chain probably contributed to that, but we don't know, and the report didn't say that. It said it arrived late.
It's a contribution, but I cannot say it's the only reason.
Yes, Member Barnett, you want to comment with regards to the CDC aspect of the member's question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'll request if Colonel Hussein. to
Yes,
shed
go
some
ahead,
additional-
certainly. Colonel Hussein, you have,
Good morning, Chair.
good morning.
I'm Colonel Hussein. I'm currently the Director General of the Civil Defense Commission. I can attest to what the PSC say during that period. We did have issues of supply. We were in a mode
Can
where,
you pull down the mic a little, sir?
sure,
Yeah.
we were in a mode where we were even improvising because of the lack of face masks. We were making face masks at the CDC to supply the populace, and that itself attests to the shortage of the item. And then alternately, we were trying to acquire face masks for the general populace, and that itself was challenging based on, as you indicated earlier, the supply chain issues in which I would want to differentiate between the epidemics of cholera and Ebola and a global pandemic
Yes.
that rocked this world.
Mr. Chairman, Colonel Hussein has not answered my question. My question had to do with 9 contracts prepared by CDC which lack key details, did not have definite terms as to the start and end dates for delivery of the said items. I am asking, why did CDC not have these key details in the contracts that they provided? We all know about the chain of supply, et cetera, but the contracts are pretty standard for procurement. Why did the CDC contracts, 9 of them, lacked key details? That's my question. I'm not interested really
Member,
in the other
Hussein,
justification.
you respond to the member's question.
Sure, Mr. Chair. On detailed examination, it is true that they lack the detail. However, I can't say at this point what attributed to the lack of details, if it was panic buying or if it was the efficiency of the staff. However, all these have been recognized and they're currently being addressed.
Can I have a follow-up? Does Colonel Hussein accept that the CDC breached procurement regulations?
Yes, Madam Minister, I acknowledge because it's stated clearly in the Auditor General's report. There was definitely a breach, and that is being corrected at the moment. Under my time. Or
Could I make a follow-up observation?
Yes, go ahead.
Because whilst you're saying, PS, that you had all these issues with COVID and supply and deficit and all of that, but the mere fact that the contract did not have a penalty would have allowed the supplier, that he's not going to be penalized, so he could take his own good time to supply.
To the chair, I respectfully ask that the AG clarify the issue of the contract clause query, but on the issue of enforcing the contract, my observation and the research I did show that is a combination of circumstantial and also poor management of the contract.
Member, Maipoya.
Thank you, sir. So it says here at 14, a contract described as a legal agreement existing between 2 parties must have 5 essential elements. And may I ask the AG, what are the 5 essential elements that are necessary for this contract? It isn't stated here. I'm not a lawyer. I never said that. That's not on record.
Okay, the member has a for the members' edification, AG, could you respond to the members' question?
Man, shut your mouth, let me hear the AG demand. No, me finish. I got 2 follow-up.
Mr. Chairman, I had my light on. Yes. Tell him of acceptance consideration.
The AG got to answer the question. You want to be the AG now? You don't want to, you get the Attorney General. What you want, Auditor General?
Offer, through the chair, it is offer, acceptance, condition,
Consideration and exemption clause.
determination and performance.
Good. So, sir, in terms of the Civil Defense Commission, and we did ask for the officers who are present here for their time when they were in their respective positions. So can I ask if the officer who was responsible for to draft these contracts are present here?
Colonel Hussein's Civil Defense Commission. I took over the Civil Defense Commission in July of 2022. My predecessor has since resigned. He is now engaged in by CIDEMA in Barbados. The accountant at that time has also resigned and is not on the job. And to add some clarity to the whole accountability arrangement at that time, during the period that we are dealing with, the Civil Defense Commission fell under the Guyana Defense Force for accountability. And the Guyana Defense Force, of course, comes under the office of the president. Because they are from Treasury, there's an accounting officer in Guyana Defense Force. So the accounting officer for that period would have been Colonel Anderson of the GDF. And he is not on the job at the moment either.
So no staff member of yours that is present here with us played any direct role in the drafting of these contracts?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Remember that then?
could I ask the PS, these contracts had performance dates? Were the dates by which performance had to be done, were they specified?
Through the chair, based on the samples we reviewed, the date of the contract, we did see a delivery period. So we did see a delivery period. There was a time frame for delivery.
And was there a commencement date of the contract?
There was, on further discussions with the procurement officer at that time, they are using the commencement date as the date of signing the contract.
But it doesn't state in the contract that this is the commencement date.
That one specifically, I will scan through and let you know. Just 1 second.
And what about the date at which the contract comes to an end, or was the contract intended to be ongoing?
Normally for the supply of goods, the contract comes to an end when the goods are fully delivered within the delivery period.
Now, these contracts were sole sourced, were they? Were they sole sourced?
Yes, the contracts on the query, most of them were sole source for various things, including PPEs. And it from the findings of them, sometimes there were the process being completed before the paperwork is followed.
What process was completed before the paperwork?
Meaning they would have secured orders, in some instances, secured the order from the supplier before an award is given or before an official notice to deliver was provided. And the reason keeps pivoting back to the circumstances. But I wish to know that I took over in the same climate and we make sure we did public tenders and sign contracts and have our awards in place.
Sole sourcing would require that you have or you identify a list of persons from which you would tell essentially the tender board that these are the people that would be able to supply, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be selective tendering. Sole sourcing would be when you ask the tender board for one specific supplier.
Was that ever done before the contract would have been entered into?
There were a few instances when they engaged the supplier to deliver before engaging tender board.
So Well, can we work backwards then? How would that supplier have been identified? What would be the usual process?
There is no legal process to ask a supplier to deliver a product without having an approval.
No, I don't mean that. How do you arrive that this is the supplier you're going to?
Depending on the circumstances, it's for many reasons. I would assume in an example where I need something, we would have to do some kind of scanning of the market to understand who have the product you need urgently. And then
so when you would do that, you would have to do some due diligence about who could supply the materials.
That's correct.
Do you have any information or do you have any record that was done, that the persons that you were engaged in were people who had the capacity or who had supplied the ministry before? Do you have any information about that?
We found no evidence of due diligence or any form of checks being done to properly validate the suppliers but we would have to go case by case. But from my research, we did not find any first layer of due diligence.
So can you provide to us then, on the basis of the suppliers, the 9 contracts? Firstly, the 9 contracts were with different entities or more than one contract to a single entity?
I think the specific case you're raising, this is for CDC, the 9 contracts is for CDC. But the general questions I've answered.
Okay, so could Colonel Hussein tell me if the 9 contracts, were they all 9 separate entities or were there more than one contract?
Can you speak up, sir?
We're not hearing.
There were more than one contract for different entities.
So, all right. So let's go backwards then. 9 contracts we're talking about here. How many total entities were involved? You didn't bring it up. So you're telling me. You're there reaching the time. You know that. You weren't born into it. The
records show 9 different entities.
9 separate entities.
Correct, sir.
Were the contracts that were used for the 9 separate entities, were they identical or were they materially different?
The local ones will be identical. The only one is the one from China that we didn't see a contract.
Which is the one from China?
There was a purchase of PPEs, personal protective equipment from China, Xinjiang Import and Export, on the March of 2020.
In March of 2020, and you have no contract for that?
We haven't seen a contract. It was a purchase.
But that's a major breach of the procurement rules. In other words, this wasn't single sourced. You didn't have
give you the floor, Madam Teixeira.
Sorry?
I didn't give you the floor.
Oh,
so if you don't have a contract, how do you know what should have been supplied? Here now, you could go sit there. Good. Colonel, if you didn't have a contract, how do you know what should have been supplied?
Colonel, for the committee's benefit, can you determine if there was indeed a contract that facilitated that, even though it wasn't even though you cannot find it at the present moment? was a contract in existence that caused these goods to be procured and delivered?
I cannot say that contract is in existence. I haven't seen it. However,
Do you have,
purchases could have been done through a purchase order.
Chair, on a point of order, we can ask the
Colonel,
audit
okay,
office for
okay.
guidance.
Can the AG determine if there was indeed a contract? Because the report reflected that there were 9 contracts.
And we have to get a copy too if Mr. Datlin is getting a copy. We want to see it too.
So there was a contract, AG? Okay, yes, there was a contract.
The man never said it.
you want to know who signed it?
I could care less.
Aye.
Now, so the rules, as I understand it from the PS, is that entities that had supplied before or you had relations with before, that's how you would then go and say, this is the entity supplying. Now, in terms of the 9 contracts that you came to, were these picked to say these are the 9? Were any other entities approached? Or do you have a record that it was other than handpicked, meaning were other entities approached with the ability to supply or inquiries made? He's a record keeper. He has a record.
I can't say at the moment, sir.
No, this is for the food. This is for the food. Find one. No. So what my question, Colonel, so to be clear, the entities that were picked for which you went to supply materials of whatever kind, these 9 contracts, were there any alternatives? How were they picked? How were they handpicked out of all of the lot to be able to supply?
I can't say at the moment, sir, but however, I could add some clarity. Some of these entities were pre-qualified by the Ghana Defense Force.
That's my point.
And that's how they would have been selected.
This is best thing, isn't it? So of the pre-qualification, was there only one company pre-qualified or several would have been pre-qualified?
Who's the chief of staff? Now, Mark Phillips. End of the signature.
Thank God for this.
Do you have a follow-up member?
Yes, I did. I asked if there was it one company that was pre-qualified for all of these things? There must be multiples. So how did you end up picking this one? There must have been several companies that the GDF would have pre-qualified. How did we end up picking this one, especially the one in China?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Member Boyd.
so as I look at the list, we have several companies here who were pre-qualified by the JDF at the time. I'm going to make an assumption that
No, we don't want any assumption.
so
There were 7 companies that were pre-qualified,
pre-qualified.
and based on the GDF judgment, they made a choice. Yes. Were the companies, the contract, the contract that was awarded, was it awarded to one of the pre-qual companies from the GDF?
Well, we have 9 awards that were given, and it's 9 different companies.
And all of those had the accreditation from the GDF.
I recognize
Mr. Chair, could we get the list of those pre-qualified companies?
I recognize at least 4 of them, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, can we ask for a list of the companies that the GDF at this time were on the pre-qualification list first? But my question is, how many entities were on the pre-qualification list, and whether these 9 contracts relate to an entity on the pre-qualification list? So there were 9 contracts. Are all 9 companies on the list?
I think we're going into a realm that defeats the objective of the performance audit that we are supposed to be interrogating. It is to determine if the performance of the agency with regards to the resources that were allocated to them, if the objectives of that set allocated resources were achieved. And the audit office did a performance audit to make that determination. I think we're going into the line of questioning that isn't supposed to be with regards to this performance audit.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, the performance audit would include how did we arrive at the entities that we did to spend the money. So what we're asking is, if they are pre-qualified lists, how many of them were on the pre-qualified list?
Member, I would redirect your attention to read the report.
I read the report.
And it is the report that we are interrogating.
That's what I'm asking.
That is not in the report.
Mr. Chair.
Performance audit.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Member Patterson.
Yes, I'm with you because I can't remember the name of the young person that presented the synopsis on behalf of the
Ms. Scan.
But at her presentation, she made a clear distinction what the performance audit is intended.
1 second, Member, you probably would like to hear what the members say.
Yes, she made a very clear distinction as opposed to what the performance audit, the information we're supposed to garner, and the outcomes and the assessment between that and a financial regulatory audit. Maybe you may want to highlight it back again for Mr. Dattadin and for the committee. She at the very outset of our beginning of our presentation, she said, "Oh, this is the clear distinction between where we're going now, as opposed to what the performance audits are supposed to be." So I'm just, because like you, I'm a bit lost where we're going now.
Yes, Member Financial.
Thank you, sir. I've been trying.
So, Mr. Chairman.
I think I'm on
Member
the floor.
Financial.
If I'm so guided. Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I've been trying
Mr.
to
Chairman,
get
I was
the floor.
I was in the middle of saying what I'm saying. We had comments from Mr. Patterson.
Member
Dattadin,
respectfully,
to his
the chair give the permission to Ms. Finance.
Thank you,
Proceed.
sir. Thank you, sir. So I've been trying to get the floor for a little while now because of the same issue that Mr. Patterson is raising, and I have to foresee my apologies to the ministry that is here for this particular part because and this is being streamed live. So for everyone, this is the very first time the PSC is actually examining a performance audit. So because of that, you may hear some back and forth as to what should be and should not be questioned at this point, sadly, at this forum here today. But sir, just for the reminder of persons here, I want to remind folks, particularly for the persons that were not did not benefit from the training that we did have. The PSC did send members, a member from the government side and members from the opposition side to a training, particularly when it comes to how we are dealing with performance audits And it was very clear during those sessions that when we look at a performance audit is value for money. We're not to go into the accounting aspect. And when it comes to the procurement processes that we're using, those are things that you do when you're examining a financial audit. So the questions that we should be asking here today is particularly there's 6 recommendations that was made from the audit office as accomplished. There are findings that has been listed. And there are 6 recommendations. And the basis of going forward with the performance questioning at this point is to look at the 6 recommendations. And I hear a lot of questions coming on the contracts and so forth. And I want to highlight at this point, and this is going to be my question to the PS. For the first 2 recommendations, recommendation number 1 and recommendation number 2, it says in recommendation number 1, the audit office recommends that the Director General of the Civil Defense Commission should ensure that all contracts include start and end date to protect the Commission against defaulting suppliers. And the second recommendation here says the audit office recommends that the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Health and Director General of the Civil Defense Commission include a penalty clause in each contract and enforce the clause against delinquent suppliers. So it says here to us, sorry, that after the audit office would have concluded all its investigation, these are the 2 things that they're asking be done. So the question that I'm asking right now to the accounting officer here, the PS, is what processes, what steps rather have you taken thus far to ensure that this is in check? Are there any challenges in making sure that this is so? And obviously, I'm going to have another question to the audit office when it comes to follow-up. What procedure are you putting in place for follow-up to make sure that when we move forward, there is value for money in these processes? Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, PS.
Thank you. Through the chair, as it relates to recommendation number 2, partially offered to the Ministry of Health, we have fully adhered to these recommendations before the report was even published. Contract clause are in place. We also are aggressively working to improve contract management. That would include the enforcement of the clauses, such as penalty clause, where we've assigned staff to dedicate themselves to the delivery times, that we have performance guarantees in place, and that there's regular engagement with these contractors and regular cadence to ensure that they meet certain the requirements. However, health contracts are difficult contracts, and we do have instances where sometimes circumstances beyond our control where we have to make exceptions for late deliveries.
Yes, and as I continue, sir, recommendation number 3, and I think this is the one that I think bears more weight for me personally. The recommendation says the audit office recommends that the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Health and the Director General of the Civil Defense Commission should engage the Ministry of Legal Affairs and other stakeholders to have the Procurement Act of 2003 amended to include emergency procurement policies and procedures. So, and I want to make the point right now, and I think it was made at the very beginning, that COVID-19, that whole scenario, it was unprecedented. It's something that the world faced, that the world has never really faced something of that magnitude in this time that we're living in, sir. And what is most important, I believe, is for us to have an understanding that over the years, these acts and these laws governing procedures evolve over time. And because of that, that's why we're here examining performance report right now, because there's an evolution. We're moving away from that heavy financial audit and moving towards performance audit. So in so doing, I think it is very important that persons not only come and say that, oh, well, we are fixing this and it is being done now, even though it wasn't done before and all of that. And we need to recognize that if there were challenges in actually getting these things done, what recommendations would be made at your level to make sure that it is done in a right manner, that there's legislations and laws that is making it easier on you so that moving forward, you do not have to be slated here as breaching this and breaching that. If there is no law that is there that includes emergency procurement policies and procedures, what is your recommendation? Was the Ministry of Legal Affairs even consulted with? These are the things that we want to know, so it's going to be made easier as we move forward.
Yes, PS, go ahead.
Thank you.
But before you go ahead, let me remind the member, we're not moving away from financial audits. We are including performance audit because it's important for us to know, after we have given all of this money and interrogated by a financial audit, how we are progressing as a nation with regards to our performance with all of these resources. Go ahead, PS.
Thank you, Chair. As it relates to the recommendation, the PS will, I would seek guidance because I'm not sure if just our ministry is experiencing this issue, which is clear here, and it seems to be more of a policy initiative that needs to be generated. But I will seek guidance on how we can approach this. But at this stage, I have not contacted Legal Affairs to change a policy on this matter. The Procurement Act does have the need to do sole sourcing based on emergency, was a general clause. But to engage, I'm not sure if I am the one to initiate the change in policy, as it seems to be more of a high level issue.
Well, it's not a matter of you being the one, but as the PS, with that overarching responsibility and being part of the day-to-day operation, you see on hand firsthand, you experience what is going on, and you can make recommendations that can inform the policy.
Sorry, Chair. I just want to know that I used the Procurement Act during the pandemic, and I don't really, this issue that is highlighted here, I was able to use the Procurement Act to buy the things we need. So the recommendation, again, we'll have to look back at it to see whether we agree as a ministry and then on ways going forward. But it's not my only decision to discuss this issue.
Yes.
But the act as it stands, I use it just as it is.
Okay, ma'am.
I don't want, if I can just wrap up on this particular point, sir. I don't want the point to be lost as saying that you can't move forward and you are not, and you in your capacity right now is following the act as is. The very fact, and I want to make this clear, the very fact that this is a recommendation that is coming from the audit office. It's not a recommendation coming from the PAC. The audit office has recommended that the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Public Health and the Director General of the Civil Defense Commission should engage the Ministry of Legal Affairs and other stakeholders to have the Procurement Act of 2003 amended to include emergency procurement policies and procedure. This, first of all, I want to make this point, Mr. Chair, that at the completion of the performance audit report, the 6 recommendations are given. The very first thing is if the ministry, the very fact that the ministry is giving this response is indicating to me as though the ministry does not agree with this recommendation. And the very first thing should have been that the ministry accept these findings and these recommendations and you move forward as such. So for me to hear this at this point says that there wasn't much communication between the ministry and the audit office as it pertains to these recommendations, because it is at the point of examining at the PAC right now, and this shouldn't be an issue at this level. This should have been something that was ironed out before. The audit office is recommending this because the audit office sees this as a right move, that this is a legal process that can be entailed. And I don't want it to be a point, sir, that we have to go forward with from this very first examination, is that we don't just have recommendations here, and when persons leave here, it is just like this. This is a very strong recommendation, and I dare say that I support. Moving forward, let us actually look at the recommendations. We cannot move anyway. These reports make no sense if the ministry does not act on the recommendations from the audit office. That's the whole point of the performance audit report.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
In relation to what Ms. Fernandez is saying, the I believe the recommendation, whilst well-intentioned, is misdirected in the sense that this is a policy direction that the Auditor General should make. NPATAB is certainly a body that oversees the Procurement Act, and this is a policy direction that would have to go to Cabinet. It would be rather unusual for the head of CDC and the PS of Ministry of Health to engage on what is a policy matter. The Auditor General should have, I believe, recommendation should have been for consideration for amendment to the Act by the Ministry of Legal Affairs. That's one. The second thing to do with the comments made on performance audit. When $1 billion is spent and there were still shortages of drugs and supplies, although $1 billion was spent, that is an indication that something was wrong. And therefore, there are several things that happened that were wrong. And the report points out those. One is that contracts were given without the NPATAB approval, that contractors delivered late in some cases, and when we come to paragraph 24, over $400 million, which is almost 50% of the 900, well, more than 50% of the 983 million spent on drugs and medical supplies, that went ahead without national procurement tender approval. Not only these financial breaches, but they also leave the ministry vulnerable to lack of delivery and lack of accountability in terms and management of the supplies they've requested. So there's a link between the auditing aspects as well as the performance. If you purchase and they're not delivered, then it affects the performance of the ministry. If you have over $424 million with no approval, payments being made, contracts being signed, and that's 50% of all your medical supplies being imported for or purchased for COVID. At the same time, you have extreme shortages because the supplies were not supplying. And this was made public in March, April, May, June of 2020. This is not secret. And so there is a connection between the financial management and procurement management of $1 billion by the Ministry of Health and the CDC in regards to what was an epidemic. Secondly, this issue of expeditious release of contracts and approved by NPATAB, I am very aware. And so NPATAB is also, and I believe FS is as well, that in an emergency, soul searching is allowed and that there are mechanical and administrative means to expedite the process with NPATAB. This can be done within a day or two. So I do not buy the argument that because of the emergency, they went willy-nilly, purchased all over the place without NPATAB approval. I do not think that reason is good enough. And I think the PS has made it clear that there was poor management of the entire process of procurement. That affected the supplies being available to the medical practitioners, the health practitioners in the public hospital and other hospitals. We know that it was publicized in the papers in March, April, May, June, that people were working in COVID wards without PPEs or using PPEs repeatedly instead of dropping them and disposing of them after each patient they encountered. So that I think we have to be careful and understand what was the context of the report and why the report came out. It is a performance audit and it's linked to how the Ministry of Health and CDC purchased the needs, the supplies that were required. And that is a major flaw in what happened in terms of the supplies and the performance. The performance was bad because, or poor, because of the inappropriate rush without keeping to basic regulations. So there's no accountability. And so if PPEs didn't deliver, no one could say why were they not delivered, who was supposed to deliver them, where were they located, etc. And that affected COVID, and that affected the health practitioners all across this country. And that's a performance issue.
Mr. Chair, could I answer the
Yes,
honorable member other part of the question?
Go ahead.
Once these reports have been submitted to the Public Accounts Committee and they have been examined, then around about 3 years after, we go back to see if these recommendations are implemented. So that's the normal policies during the performance audit. So first of all, they have to come to the Parliament and be examined. So we give the entity time in which to put these recommendations into place.
A follow-up to
Yes,
that
go ahead.
with AG. AG, could you say whether or not the audit office was in communication with the ministry during the process of putting the report together, specifically when it comes to the recommendations that were being slated here, and if there were any issues that was stated from the ministry as it pertains to any of the recommendations being made by the audit office?
Good morning again. During our examination and at our exit conference, we have discussed the report in the entirety. A draft report would have been sent out to the agency, and we had follow-up discussion. At no time did any of the agency report the recommendations, and we are corresponding to that effect.
Could you say when this exit meeting was done?
The 7th of October, 2020. So, for example, the officer in charge at CDC then was Colonel Kester Craig, and for at the Ministry of Health was Ms. Adams.
And prior to coming to this meeting here today, did the audit office engage the ministry, particularly when it comes to the entirety of this report, given that it's a almost completely new slate of persons being here today?
On the 17th of February, our office engaged the Ministry of Health, and on the 18th, we engaged CDC. Also, a follow-up visit would have been done with CDC the following day.
And was any issues raised as pertains to the findings or the recommendations set forth in the report?
We just went through the findings, and the ministry agreed on the report, but there was no major deviation from the report. Most of the time was just based on clarity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say at this point in time, it would not be efficient use of the PAC's time if these things are not examined properly between the two agencies. And I want to say that the ministry, if that meeting was had, well, the communication was had as being indicated there, then that was a place in which things are said that we're not in agreement with this recommendation or so forth, because as it is, when it comes to this stage, the PAC, it should not be to trash out whether or not we agree with recommendations or not. I think that is a process that we definitely need to be cleared up, because I don't know how to move forward with my questioning if there are more recommendations. I think I'm going to ask this very openly, sir. I'm going to ask an open question to say, of the 6 recommendations, this is to the accounting officer, of the 6 recommendations made by the audit office here in the report, are there any recommendations that the ministry doesn't agree with? And of the 4 findings being highlighted also in the report, are there any findings that are not accepted by the ministry to be correct?
Go ahead, yes.
Apart from the discussion we just had about the laws the procurement laws being changed for procurement for emergency purchases, we do not have any objection to the other recommendations here, because as most of them was already in place when I took over, we put them in, we improved on them, so they were already as part of the normal process. So, yeah.
Chairman, if I may.
Hold on, the member has the floor.
Yes, sir, I asked a question to go into the next recommendation as being stated here. Well, another recommendation, particularly recommendation number 5, that says the audit office recommends that the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Public Health and the Director General of the Civil Defense Commission put in place gift registers to account for donations of gift items. Gifts received rather. And I want to ask both the Director General and the PS here today if they have in place, as of today, the 27th of February 2023, both of them have in place gift registers for gift receipt. Is that something that is actively being done right now?
Current state, yes. On reviewing this query before the recommendation, we found that it was not properly kept during the period in question.
No, but it didn't say it's not properly kept. It's saying that it wasn't in place. It's been asked here, the recommendation is being asked by the audit office for them to put it in place, which would give the assumption, which is saying clearly that it's not in existence. And also for the Director General, the same question.
Yes, ma'am. I can attest that there's a gift register in place, and the representatives from the audit office did ask to see it last week. So maybe they can endorse.
Yes. Dr.
Chair, I want to make a recommendation before I ask a question. That we seem to be jumping forward and backward because I'm still on page 4. And my colleague would have asked on page 8.
I wasn't under the impression that we have to go page for page. So
No, the report was before.
the report was before the
entire report.
Okay.
So Mr. Chairman.
And you don't have the floor. The honorable member has the floor, and he hasn't concluded this question.
Nice, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, referring to table 2, so I see there $158 million used to buy the, just picking one at random, the reagents, the PCR, RNA testing. If you're talking value for money, were the items paid for here, were they all received? How do we know that they were received? Were they recorded and all of that? And to go back a bit further, so if we didn't value for money, like my colleague was saying, so how did we choose these suppliers if they were not pre-qualified? How do we know that we get value for money if we just pick someone at random? And these tests that, like I said, I chose this one here, these tests that we would have paid for, how many tests could we have done? How many were done? And we are talking value for money here.
I think the question is directed to both ministry and this. Is your question for the ministry of health?
All right. So I think I can give a broad synopsis on the issue of value for money. So we can confirm that the items purchased during that time that were COVID related, they were delivered. And we know that now that some were delivered beyond the contract period. If we use the example of the mask, which was the main item, during that time, we see that prices from masks were averaging, the ministry was paying about $7.50 US per mask. This is a KN95. In November, October, November, when I took over, we did a public tender for masks and we paid 83 cents. So it's a matter, I guess it's a question you'd have to consider scarcity, but it's a very big difference in costs versus what we paid, what I paid, and what was paid then. For example, 10,000 masks was $15 million at $7.50 per mask. And we bought more, of course, but we only paid 83 cents in a competitive process. So that's just a small response to the value for money question.
Sir, I follow up to that very same question, if I could, to the PS, and thank you for your response to that. But PS, when we talk about value for money, we're not talking about how much you paid for it then and how much you paid for it now. When during the COVID pandemic, when everything was at its peak, we were seeing a pack of masks was $2,000 a pack. Now it's $100 a pack, right? You took over in a very different time with a very different scenario. When we talk about value for money, sir, and I'm making it clear because that's what we're discussing right now. Sir, I would like to ask Mr. Data not to make a circus out of this questioning period. Let them not make a circus of it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So when we talk about value for money, we're basically asking the masks that were purchased here, the masks that we're discussing here, the purchase of those items, regardless of the amount that you want to say is different from what you paid and what was paid then, were they utilized? Were they used? Did persons benefit from it? Were lives saved by this process of utilizing these masks? That's what we're asking, sir. That is value for money. That is what it is.
Go ahead, PS.
Through the chair, these masks would have purchased between
members. Allow the PS to respond. Go ahead, sir.
The period upon which we conducted the procurement in question was in the same year. The difference would have probably been about 6 months apart, but we were in the height of COVID at the same time. There was no difference in the circumstances upon when this mask was purchased and when we procured. Additionally, yes, the masks were put in use, but from a performance standpoint, as PS looking at this, I would have done more to probably get more competitive bidding, even if it was some market research to be done, because the price, we know that we were being price gouged during that time, but we could have done more to do more research.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask in relation to when we had mentioned about the procurement list from the CDC, if you could indicate to them that they should lay over who were the people at the time and if there were any that were not of the 9 contracts. If they were not pre-qualified, then the question begs the question, how would they identify it and how do we know its value for money? Because the whole purpose of the performance is you usually went to a track record, but if there was no track record, how did you know that this is what to get? So if we could just ask that the CDC, if you could indicate that they should lay that over. But on the recommendation that was made as it relates to the recommendations, a recommendation was made as it relates to engaging Ministry of Legal Affairs or whatever other agency that would be required in terms of amending the laws. What I would like to ask the PS is, you would have come into, when you would have come in, you would have still had the pandemic. The pandemic would have only been a few months old at the time. The bulk of the pandemic was subsequent to that time. And with the procurement laws that exist, that you met, that existed, were you able to effectively navigate with those laws? And were you able to receive that which you required and have it delivered in a timely manner so that you can, so the citizens would benefit?
Through the chair, the pandemic was much more severe when I took over. It was escalating. And yes, I was able to navigate the process with the existing laws. It only took us not a long period to do a public tender where we got competitive prices, as I just mentioned. And during that time, we did do a few stopgap purchases, but based upon the time span here in question, there was no reason why the procurement team at that time could have done a public tender whilst doing small purchases. And it seems that that was not done as a strategic action, which we did.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
to follow up the recommendation that was made that the laws, the core of the recommendation, the substance is that the laws should be changed to accommodate these emergencies. In your mind, you think the laws are sufficient at this time?
I think the laws are functional, and I don't want to come across dismissive to the recommendation. I think they're functional. Whether they can be improved, I believe that it should be a matter of a collective discussion.
Member Teixeira, you have the floor.
yes, thank you. Can I just ask a question on 24, paragraph 24, which points out that 18 contracts valued at over 424 million were awarded before approval was received. Could the PS or CDC, well, this is health, could they say whether at any time did NPTAV give approval subsequent to the contracts being awarded? And I have a follow-up to that.
Go ahead, PS.
Through the chair, yes, the contracts that we have examined so far shows that award subsequently was provided.
For 424 million.
I do not want to say exactly for 424, but I'm getting a affirmative that yes, the awards were subsequently received after.
Secondly, when you go to paragraph 29, the conclusion, are you in agreement with the conclusion that the Ministry of Public Health and Civil Defense Commission did not procure COVID-19 supplies in an efficient manner? There was no monitoring of the performance of contracts, which resulted in the millions of dollars of supplies being delivered close to a month after the delivery dates had expired. In addition, the entities prepared purchase orders after receiving supplies. These findings made us conclude that the entities did not procure COVID-19 supplies in an efficient manner. But throughout this section, from paragraphs 1 right to 29, it is talking, the descriptions refer to breaches of the Procurement Act and regulations. Do you find that this particular conclusion, you agree with it?
Through the chair, with the exception of a few corrections, in principle, I would agree with the nature of the conclusion, as the procurement process is quite a difficult process that we're still managing. However, the issue of proper monitoring of the performance of the contract, I do agree with that they could have done more to manage the contract. On the issue of the delivery dates and expiry, I believe these were mainly medical supplies and doesn't really carry a strong expiry date after the delivery period. But I would say in principle, we agree with the conclusion.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Member Mike.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I find that question very searching, and the answer also, because the situation back then, this PS was not there, and the conditions that were available then, he did not serve under those conditions. So I think that question is more likely a question for the former PS and the former team that served under this period. So I think that it is only fitting that this question or these questions to that nature be asked to them. We don't know what was the circumstances they were under. We don't know what conditions they were performing under.
Mr.
So
Chairman.
I take objection to that question, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Finance.
Member Teixeira,
yes,
the member has responded. However, any member is free and have the liberty to ask whatever question they so.
Thank you. I was just following the trend of Ms. Finance. I was following the trend of Ms. Finance that she was asking the PS for his view on the recommendations. I was asking the views of the conclusions. I don't see a big distinction between both her and my line of questioning.
No, and I believe the PS response is with regards to his experience while being there at the ministry.
Exactly.
So, Members, do we have any additional question concerning this performance audit for the agency?
Can we, oh, sorry. Yeah,
There being no other question, I would like to thank the PS and team for making an appearance and answering the questions and understand that this is a new experience here at the Public Accounts Committee. And some of the questions definitely weren't supposed to be asked, were more financial based. Nevertheless, the fact that we are in our embryonic stage with regards to the performance audit, those mishaps may occur at times, but it is indeed a giant step, I believe, with respect to the Public Accounts Committee and the audit office with us examining performance audit of the respective ministries. And I believe we are on to a good start here at the Public Accounts Committee. With that said,
Just one comment. So
yes, go ahead.
I am personally disappointed that the former PSs are not here because they could have given their views also, which would have helped us.
I do share your disappointment, but life presents some unfortunate events that may hinder someone from making an appearance, but life goes on. With that said, we would like to break before we continue with the other performance audit for 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
This is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right, so we ain't giving up no more. We ain't giving up. We ain't giving
to improve some additional ones. Some studies have been done, further studies, and one of the critical ones we're doing is the connection between Bellevue-Chopin and Pichelin. That would also serve as a bypass during the construction of the road once it started, and that is going to open up a whole set of lands in between Bellevue-Chopin and Pichelin, where farmers already farming, but more people can be able to go in there, and so there's so many things that are happening, notwithstanding the challenges that we have brought on by the COVID-19 and also the Russia-Ukraine war, which is creating a serious challenge for all of us with the imported inflation. It's a huge challenge for governments because people believe that the government is not affected by the inflation. Government is the largest consumer of goods and services. And so the cost of running the country is much more expensive now than it was prior to the pandemic and prior to the Russia-Ukraine war. You know, in many instances, we've had to subsidize a number of these of the goods and services which Dominican citizens consume to protect them or to shield them from the impact. Yes, Matt, please.
Get the young people to ask questions.
But we would like to hear from you as well. So, yeah, let's hear from you anyway. From yeah,
Give him a chance after that?
yeah. Sure. She'll have the last question.
All right, she'll have
we leave the best for last.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You spoke earlier about eating healthy. You want to stand up? Oh, stand up, okay, sorry. Yeah, you spoke earlier, Mr. Prime Minister. I was not here, but I heard on the radio about people eating healthy. And of course, in supermarkets, you know, they charge heavily on these healthy foods. Are you willing to, you know, address that issue about the taxes on these healthy foods at the supermarket? And secondly, there's another question, I think, for the Foreign Minister. You appointed recently Mr. Ian Douglas to the post of Ambassador of Cuba. When will he be taking up that appointment? Because according to my information, Mr. Walter has a contract until June and July.
Sure.
Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. The first question, Matt, on the issue of healthy foods. The truth is we have to grow a lot of what we eat. It is not advisable for most of us to rely on a supermarket for a source of food. The supermarket can complement what we have. The average family, and even if you live in a city, and I see the part of Peroso has launched an initiative of vertical agriculture and hoping to get our constituents be part of it, where they can grow certain limited amount of vegetables in their homes and where they live and so forth. And so we can improvise. We have to grow more of what we eat. Where is the spinach we used to have in our backyards today? And then you go there and your grandmother tell you go outside and get some spinach, and you take some spinach and you clean it and we cook for lunch. Where are beans that we can grow? You can go to the supermarket, buy a pound of red beans or pink beans, sow the seeds, and in a couple of weeks you have pounds and pounds of beans. And if you want to harvest it young, so you can eat the skin, boil it to the skin, and have it more nutritious and so forth, you can do that, or let it be mature where you can have the beans. We have to grow what we eat. We can't have yards and so on, and then plaster it with crazy tiles, instead of leaving the space to grow fruits and vegetables. You know, instead of throwing away the old fridge and so on, once we take out the motor from the fridge, let us fill it with soil if we don't have land here to put, and put some soil in it and grow our spinach, grow our lettuce, and grow something. You know, we cannot afford. I don't think the average family can afford. Anybody in the Caribbean can afford to go out to the market and buy juice to feed a family. First of all, most of the juices are not healthy. And secondly, the cost of it, because it is imported. And by the time you open a box of juice, any one of us who buy a box of juice, you open it, you have to throw the cover because one serving, $25 later. So I'm not here to lecture people on how to spend their money. That's what I'm doing. All I'm doing as the Prime Minister of the country is to draw to the attention of the public a concern which is affecting all of us in Dominica. Every family in Dominica has been affected by this. You know, we have to encourage people to in the countryside where we have space and so on. Why don't we have our own chickens laying our eggs? Why don't you have all fruits? I'm not saying everybody has land to grow as all of the fruits that they need, but some things that we have that we can make use of it. Understand? Because the idea of taking all monies and buying all of this high oily stuff and so forth that is really causing the problems. We don't know where it came from, and so forth. We can find ways among ourselves, because some of the things we're talking about, the healthy foods and so forth, sometimes most of them, I think we need to share with the public some of the goods that do not attract VAT and do not attract import duty, so people can appreciate what is it that we have. But we have to look to ourselves and to see what actions we need to take. Exercise. There's no tax on exercising normally. There's no VAT on it. You see what I'm saying? There's no VAT on it. There's no import duty on it. You see what I'm saying? We just have to walk, get up in the morning and walk and exercise and run and do some aerobics and so forth and sweat and burn the calories. We have to watch the consumption of cholesterol and control that, and salt. All of these things we have to look at. But I think one of the fundamental things is that at the school level, we have to get children to be engaged in growing things at their homes. This idea of schools telling children to get 2 bins and put it in a cup and what the toilet paper and so on. I mean, we have to get them to grow things that they can eat, and so forth. And I have said to the Ministry of Education, to the health people that we have to define what the meals should be at the school feeding program. And if it means that we have to increase the budget for the school feeding program, then let us increase the budget for the school feeding program to ensure that children eat healthy. We should not get ourselves involved in the schools and the communities of companies having promotion with some box drinks, and the more covers you can get or labels you can get, they'll give you 2 cases of juice or something. We should be encouraging the children to eat local stuff, eat them local mangoes and bananas and so forth. So there are things that we have to do that will cut down on our cost of groceries. And because if you look at any one of us, they look at what we have in the shelves and the kind of seasoning that we have, we don't need it. When I cook what I call a broth, you guys call it a broth and rosa and so on. Well, I call it a broth. When I cook a broth and so on, I use all local seasoning. There's no foreign seasoning. I only use a little salt. But outside of the little salt I use, nothing. All of this seasoning comes from my farm. All local: celery, thyme, parsley. I don't use parsley. I don't like parsley. Parsley is more for garnishing, decoration. So on. I don't like. Yeah, seasoning peppers and so forth. And maybe I use a garlic and so on. If I don't have garlic, I use chive, because chive and garlic are family and so on. So that's it. But people put in saison in a brav, they put in chicken soup, a cube, and that's not for brav. Chicken soup in a brav. I mean, adding salt to this thing and saison, bohayo, and they coloring the rice with the salty stuff, and everybody all the Dominicans doing, just and then we are adding to our challenges and so forth. And I'm speaking on this matter because we're family in this country. We're discussing a very important matter there. You know what I'm saying? And speaking to the real life actions that are taking place in our kitchens in Dominica. And I'm saying that we have to stop. Some years ago, I had said to the public service, every ministry should take on one day a week, stop work at 3 o'clock and go into the Windsor Park and to exercise. A very few people took advantage of this opportunity. And I want to offer it to public servants that every department of government should take 1 day in the week, leave work at 3 o'clock, and exercise for the next hour. I don't need you to be in there and getting sick. Go and exercise for 1 hour. Go and walk in the gardens. Go and walk Jack's Walk. Walk around Roseau. Drive. So when they're driving, go in the stadium and do some exercise 1 day a week, and hoping that can mushroom into a national effort where the private sector itself can engage in. So the PSs, the CAPSEC is here, and all the PSs are here, and they all hearing me. Each ministry will take a day, 1 hour. And if you want me to get from 2:30 after lunch, you rest after lunch, find it me. I can get to you, I can get 2 hours. You understand? So you go for lunch, you rest, 2:30 to 4 o'clock, you exercise. And we will see better, more healthy people in our country and happier people because you're spending less on going to the doctor and treating yourself from something you can prevent. Yes. Vince will answer your question. I'll let him close on the press conference. So he'll ask your question.
$238 million.
214.
$40 million.
Two-
Is that an admission that
14.
Is that an admission that most of the construction workers here are foreigners?
No, it tells me that there is money. It tells me that people are engaged and so forth. You have a number of non-Dominicans working in the various construction fields because there's work. I'm not telling you, we are in a perfect system in this country, but there's work and it shows by the remittances that are leaving the country. It shows. I mean, you go to any one of these establishments, as I've observed myself, and you always have long queues. Long queues of this taking place. And yes, ma'am. And Minister Henderson will close with respond to you and close the press conference. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My question is directed to Dr. Henderson.
Okay, great. Sorry. Okay.
Marsha Mello, DBS News. Over the independent season as well as the carnival season, we have heard a heightened call for intra-regional travel. What is the government in Dominica as well as the region doing to solve this problem? And for the information of my colleague, can you highlight the major ambassador positions that have been given to embassies of Dominica abroad? Thank you.
So with regards to regional travel, as a matter of fact, that was one of the items which was discussed at the last CARICOM heads meeting. There was no decision on it, but there was a commitment by all the heads to work together collectively to resolve interregional travel. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas expressed the interest in working with Air Bahamas to move throughout the region, moving from north to south. So that was part of the discussion. Of course, Caribbean Airlines, there was a discussion on that, and the LIAT 2020, we've seen some discussions also took place around how we can work to improve travel throughout the region. So that is a major challenge, and I'm hoping that we will see some further action taken by the CARICOM heads to resolve that issue. Dominica is particularly concerned because we have our diaspora communities, especially those in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, who come home very often. So we have to ensure that they have access. In the case of St. Martin, we know that is service, could I say adequately, by Win Air Carib. So we have some movement there, and we're hoping that we can continue working towards enhancing regional travel. I think especially the fact that American Airlines continue to provide a major service from Miami, that too perhaps might serve as a disincentive to see the growth of regional airlines within the northern part of the Caribbean coming to Dominica. But fortunately, we've seen Silver Airways making new investments in that area of new aircrafts and providing services. But we recognize as well that there's serious challenges with personnel, shortage of personnel. That continues to be an issue. Even when LIAT was in full operation, that was a problem. And Silver Airways having the similar challenges with personnel, because that is an international phenomenon right now. And we've seen international airlines as well suffering from that, with several cancellations throughout the US and Europe. So that's what efforts are continuing in that area. With regards to ambassadors, I'll respond first to my partner question. Somebody told me I was asking for me the other day. So Matt, the situation with former Minister Ian Douglas. Ian Douglas has been nominated, as one could say. When I say nominated, because of course the Prime Minister expressed that at the swearing the address to the nation prior to the swearing of the cabinet. And Mr. Ian Douglas will become our ambassador to the Republic of Cuba once Ambassador Matthew Walters' service is over. Once his staff duty ends, he will return to Dominica, and Ian Douglas will be appointed the ambassador to the Republic of Cuba. So that will be a seamless transition. We will soon be appointing our ambassador to the United Nations. Dr. Philbert Aaron will be soon taking on this position as ambassador to the United Nations in New York, and Ambassador Steve Farrell, we expect, will soon take on his duty in Washington, D.C. as our ambassador to the United States of America. Ambassador Paul has been well settled in Abu Dhabi as our ambassador to the United Arab Emirates, and we'll continue. We expect also to have our High Commissioner, Her Excellency soon, Missy Henderson, will be taking on a position as our High Commissioner in London in due time. So the process continues, and we will fully have all our embassies and missions fully staffed, and we will see some transitions in places where there will be. So that's it. Did I capture everything? Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Do have a good rest of the day. See you again in 2 weeks.
some technical terms in terms of are they standing at ease or standing easy and that sort of thing?
Yes, well, the officers now are standing at ease in open order, and upon arrival of His Excellency, of course, they have been dressed already in proper formation, in open order, in 2 ranks, and of course, at the arrival of the Prime Minister, before preceding His Excellency, the platoon commander or the platoon overall commander will bring the platoon to attention, and of course with the fanfare they would shoulder arms, that's a military term, and come to attention obviously with the fanfare, and then the Prime Minister would take his seat, get into Parliament in preparation of the arrival of His Excellency. Upon arrival of His Excellency, again, the platoon commander will bring the entire parade, guard of honor that is, to attention. His Excellency will go up to the dais. I think the dais is already there.
Yes, it is already.
And of course, he will take the salute where the national anthem will be played, of course, as a matter of respect. And then the platoon commander will, invite His Excellency to inspect the guard. And, His Excellency would give him his permission. He would have to do that. And he inspects the guard. He comes back and he requests permission from His Excellency to continue the parade. Then again, the national anthem will be played, and His Excellency will then, enter under the portico, of course, the portico of the House of Assembly, and go straight onto the Speaker's area to deliver his address. And of course, His Excellency, we can speak on any topic of national interest, and I reckon he will talk about the whole question of Parliament today, and the development as we move into the apex of our development in the country. His Excellency will probably give some sound advice on the way forward for development.
Yes, of course, the platoon is already in place. Parliament will begin at 10. It will be some time before the arrival of His Excellency, as Parliament has to take on some important business, as I mentioned, the election of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, as well as the administration of the oath, both to the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, as well as the members of Parliament. There are 32 members of Parliament, to include the Speaker, to include the Attorney General, who is not an elected member or senator, but is coming into the House through the civil service. He is appointed Attorney General through the civil service. 32 members, some 11 women comprise the parliamentary benches at this time. This is the highest number of women in Parliament in the OECS, and I dare say CARICOM at this point. And the 11 women, of which 9 are elected members of the House of Assembly. We'll be back in a short while to continue the broadcast of the proceedings of Parliament, and when I come back, a former senior government minister will join me here before we move to the formal proceedings of the House. We'll be right back.
And as we speak, the parliamentarians are coming.
We see the arrival of the parliamentary representative for the Welcome back here to the coverage of the first meeting of the first session of the 11th Parliament in Dominica.
It is a very interesting session because this is the first time in 22 years Ian Douglas, Ambassador His Excellency Ian Douglas, will not be a member of Parliament. He is one of the luckiest members of Parliament in the sense that not at any time during his political career on parliamentary benches, he served on the opposition side. Mr. Douglas, good morning and welcome to join us here this morning.
Hi, good morning to you, Daryl. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Mr. Douglas, how does it feel? Does it feel nostalgic that you are here at Parliament but not as a member?
Yeah, it feels sort of, I wouldn't say nostalgic is the word, maybe closer to bittersweet, in the sense that, yeah, I miss the being here, the adrenaline that goes through in the preparation and the pomp and the pageantry and everything that goes with it, the responsibility also that goes with the seriousness and the approach that is needed as a parliamentarian. But like you said, I'm happy that I have done my stint. I've served the people of the Portsmouth constituency well, a constituency that have never voted or never supported any other party other than the Dominican Labour Party since 1959. We're very happy and proud to have maintained this record, even going into this term of office and of Parliament.
One of the unique things about the parliamentary makeup, I like these small anecdotes in relation to Parliament. The constituency of Bakers continues to be the only constituency which has never been on the opposite side of the aisle, meaning in the opposition. Bakers has always been a constituency which has been in government. Portsmouth has been a constituency which has always voted Labour, and there are a number of these small anecdotes we can take from the Parliament. What does it mean now, the ceremonial of opening of Parliament? What does that mean for Dominica at this time?
Well, it means that our democracy is strong and well. It means that the will of the people is being executed efficiently and effectively. We went to the polls and the people have voted in a government of their choice. Like I said, democracy is alive and well and strong in the Commonwealth of Dominica, and the people have said by their mandate that they are satisfied with the work that the government has done in the past terms, in the past years, and they are satisfied that with the plans that the government has outlined in their manifesto and in their campaign, that they're satisfied that the government will serve them in good stead. And that means that our democracy is alive and well. I'm very happy about that.
Well, Mr. Douglas, you're no longer a member of Parliament, but you had the pleasure, as you said then, of advising the incoming parliamentarians during an orientation session that they had. There are a number of new members of Parliament at this time, young members as well, a number of ladies. Do you think that will change the outlook of Parliament with the different makeup at this time?
Yes and no. It wouldn't change the outlook in the sense that we'll continue because the same government is in power, and the direction and the trajectory of the government, the vision of the government continues to unfold. We have a lot of new and young parliamentarians, both on the government and the opposition side. And it's an opportunity for the entire parliamentary process to take fresh guard. Everybody in Dominica knows, and everybody who's listened to our parliamentary proceedings know that it has been a bit contentious in the past, in the sense that government and the opposition have not worked as well as they should, because there's always the perception that opposition must oppose. Opposition don't necessarily have to oppose every measure of the government. If the opposition feels that a measure being put forward is in the interest of the development of Dominica and of the citizens of the country, then it would do them well, to serve them well and serve their credibility well, to support those measures. And that is the kind of approach that I would like to see in this new parliament, in this new sitting, that the citizens feel that the legislature is really united for the attainment of the vision for the development of Dominica. The Prime Minister has outlined that we want Dominica to be the first and world's first climate resilient country. And I believe that that is a vision that all of us can embrace. You don't necessarily have to sit on any side of the political divide to embrace that vision and contribute and make your contribution towards the attainment of that vision. And that sort of leadership process starts in the parliament, so that constituents can see that all the parliamentarians are united behind that vision, behind the attainment of that goal for a better Dominica through climate resiliency.
A lengthy session is on the cards there. Is this one of the lengthier opening sessions of Parliament? A number of bills are up, supplementary estimate, so parliamentarians will get going very, very early in this session.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually you would have perhaps a more ceremonial opening, traditionally, where you have the president giving the throne speech, as it's called, and the prime minister perhaps giving an introductory speech, really outlining his vision for the term of office. But we see that because the government has been in place, we have a sort of smooth continuation, a smooth transition, and a continuity, because we really have work to do in Dominica, and no moment can be lost in the advancement of the work that has to be done for the attainment of the goals that we set ourselves. And so it's good to see that this parliament and this government by extension has hit the ground running, and it will give the young parliamentarians an opportunity to observe all of the various processes of parliament and get up to speed in a quicker time really than if we had gone the traditional route of just a speech from the president and a speech from the prime minister. But you see that the work is going on apace, and that speaks a lot, that speaks well for the government. And for the new members, like I said, most of them are parliamentary secretaries, so they are attached to various ministries, and most of them are coming in as parliamentary representatives, so they have constituencies and they have a vision for the continued development of those constituencies. So we have supplementary appropriation, and some of those appropriations speak to various measures that the government would have taken at the individual grassroots constituency level. And so some of those parliamentary representatives have an opportunity to speak to those measures and at the same time weave their own vision for the continued development of their constituency into their contributions in the parliament today.
What advice would you have for the new members of parliament?
Stay focused, stay disciplined, but stay humble. Stay close to the people, because they're the ones who put you there. It's a balancing act that you have to do, because you cannot be advocating for your constituency, which comes across as being against the government's plans and programs. So you have to get it right very early and strike the balance between what you want for your constituency and what the government is trying to achieve.
Well, we now see the arrival of the Prime Minister of Dominica. Thank you, Mr. Douglas, for joining us here this morning. We now see the arrival of the Prime Minister of Dominica. Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt has arrived, and Mrs. Skerritt has arrived not just as the wife of the Prime Minister, but as the new Minister for Housing and Urban Development. And the Prime Minister now will make his way towards the dais, where he will take a guard of honor salute, and of course we will see him enter the house along with Mrs. Skerritt, the parliamentary representative for the Roseau constituency. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt at this sitting of the House becomes the longest continuous serving member of Parliament. He has been a member of Parliament for the past 23 years. We now see the arrival of the Prime Minister being escorted by the Assistant Commissioner of Police.
Right!
had members of parliament such as Maynard Joseph, such as Dennis Bellamy, and they have all been members of the government of the day. In the 10 general elections we have had in Dominica, 3 have been under the Constitution, the 1978 Constitution. 3 have been won by the Dominica Freedom Party, 1 by the United Workers Party, and of course 6 by the Dominica Labour Party. This is the first meeting of Parliament when in the last 25 years that Honorable Reginald Ostry will not be a member of the House. Honorable Ostry retired as a member of Parliament following the last the general elections of December 6, 2022. Honorable Ostry likes to pride himself now as a private citizen who continues to work in the service of the people of Dominica. Mr. Irish, just to bring you back into the conversation at this time, we've seen the arrival of the Prime Minister, and very soon we will see the start of the House in just about 5 to 10 minutes time. The House promptly starts at 10 o'clock with the entry of the Speaker. However, in this case, there is no entry of the Speaker because there is no Speaker at this time. There will be the election of a Speaker, and that of course takes place at the first meeting of Parliament post a general election. The House, it will be 6 members on the opposition side and some 25 members on the side of the government of Dominica, to include the Attorney General. And we now see, from what I'm seeing in there, I have just seen the arrival of the parliamentary representative for the Marigot constituency, as well as Senators Henderson Reid and Senators Paris. They have now arrived at the House. I have not yet seen the arrival of the leader of the opposition, but from what I'm seeing here, my vantage point, a number of government members are already in their seats and in place. But Mr. Irish, the guard of honor was, what would you say for the arrival of
Well,
the
on the
Prime
arrival
Minister?
of the Prime Minister, he got that fanfare. The Prime Minister entered into the dais. Of course, his wife was escorted into Parliament, and there was a fanfare. Roseau, I should say, Honourable Melissa Skerritt, the member for Roseau constituency, Roseau Central, and of course, the Prime Minister got that beautiful fanfare from the government band. The parade commander brought the parade to attention, and as a matter of respect, they gave him that nice fanfare. But certainly, when His Excellency would have arrived, then the national anthem would be played when His Excellency enters the dais.
And His Excellency would arrive at an appointed time based on the order of the
order paper.
The order paper.
In fact, as we speak now, the election for the Speaker should be going on now.
No, it's not.
At this time,
The
or
House
at 10 o'clock.
This will be the first order of
That will be the
business.
first order of business, and immediately after that, His Excellency will arrive and alight from his vehicle and come to the dais.
Well, I don't think so. I think after the Speaker has taken his place, there will be the administration of the oath or allegiance of members of the House.
Yeah, prior
The
to his
31
arrival.
Members
Yes.
Prior to the arrival. So
Yes.
His Excellency is sometime off, but I think half an hour
Maybe
to
why-
45 minutes before
Yes.
the arrival of His Excellency.
But-
Because His Excellency cannot be outside standing.
No.
waiting for the House
But the
of
manner in
business.
which the oath is done in a sort of speedy manner that it won't delay the proceedings unduly. But certainly within the next 15 or so minutes, I think the proceedings of the oath and all the preliminaries prior to the arrival of His Excellency should have been completed, and then His Excellency arrives. And as we speak, we can say it's a real Caribbean day. The sun is out in all its glory, and certainly, I mean, look at the flowers at the portico. We are done with these beautiful flowers. The parliamentarians are in, and really a very good atmosphere. And as you indicated, the government side, of course, with 30, the parliament with 32, government with 24, plus the Attorney General 25, and they will take the oath of office in terms of, for Parliament today. And as we speak, we see one of the senators, or two senators coming
on
in.
the opposition
And yes,
side have arrived. But the House has a very packed agenda. The Prime Minister and the Minister for Investment and Governance, this is the first time in some 18 plus years that Roosevelt Skerritt will not enter the House as the Minister for Finance. The Prime Minister will lay the papers on the table, the proclamation dissolving Parliament and the proclamation summoning Parliament. And then, of course, the Minister of Finance, that is Dr. Irving McIntyre, will lay the schedule of supplementary appropriation for the period July 2021 to June 2022, as well as the Dominica Agriculture, Industrial and Development Bank financial statements of 2021, as well as the 2021 debt portfolio review paper.
Yes.
These are the papers that will be laid on the table. But a number of bills are to be presented.
Yes.
Following the debate on the supplementary estimate, the motion for the supplementary estimate.
Amendment to the Traffic Act, I
Yes, a
think.
number of things are to be debated, but the Minister for Finance will present the motion for approval of supplementary estimates to the House in the total of $235,717,376.20. Then the bills that are to be debated in the House when the House gets underway, it will be the second and third reading of a bill for an act to amend the Value Added Tax Act, a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act, and a bill for an act to amend the Pensions Act. Then there will also be bills for amendment to the Title of Registration Act, and there will also be bills for the repeal of the Highway Maintenance Levy, as well as the Road Traffic Act. And then the International Maritime Act will see some amendment, as well as the bill for an act to amend the Civil Aviation Act.
Quite a tall order
Yes.
to the Parliament.
But it seems that the proceedings of the House are beginning, so let's go across to the House of Assembly where the proceedings are on the way.
Yeah, okay. Just go. Somebody will guide you.
In that capacity.
Have it confirmed that one nominee, Mr. Joseph Thomas Isaac, has consented for the election of as Speaker of the House Assembly. Since we have only one day before the House, in accordance with Standing Orders 4.3, I now declare that Joseph Thomas Isaac declared Speaker of the House of Assembly. Honorable Cassandra Laville and also Honorable Dennis Charles is going to get the speaker, fetch the speaker. Go fetch the speaker.
I beg to express my grateful thanks for the high honor the House has been pleased to confer on me. It has been a long journey, because a lot of times when we end up in public life, people assume that's where it began. But I would like to first thank the Lord for we have reached thus far. Many Dominican professionals have had a positive impact on my life, and I would like to just highlight some of them. Ambassador Erwin Larocque, who has nurtured and guided me in my first job as a trade officer in the ministry. Mr. Patrick Pemberton, for recognizing my talent and employing me at Colgate-Palmolive as an engineer. Mr. Colin Bully, for challenging me at the OECS Export Development Unit. Dr. Colin McIntyre, who was the Minister of Trade, and at the time with His Excellency Elud Williams being the chairman of the Business Gateway Project and the Export Development Strategy. They have showed confidence in me all those years. Madam Speaker, for your work, which you have guided me through as being the Speaker when I just came in, I would like to thank you. Our most esteemed leader, who I worked with as a Minister of Environment, that's the Honorable Dr. Roosevelt Skerrit. You have taught me about leadership in a different way, about being cool, being measured. I would like to thank you on the public record, not as a politician, but as a person who I see as one of the best HR person I've seen in my life, even if I've worked with multinationals. So I would like to thank you for that, and I want all Dominicans to recognize that you are not just a politician, but a person who really have a depth of empathy for people and others. And most importantly, my wife and family, you have been there with me through thick and thin. And finally, most people who have been challenging me throughout my life, whether it's positive or negative, but to ensure that I rise to the occasion, I thank you for the challenge. God bless.
Congratulatory remarks to new speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to extend my sincere congratulations to you on your election to this high office of Speaker of the House of Assembly of Dominica. You know, life is very strange, you know, that I met the Speaker of the function. He had to rise when I walked in, and the next day I had to rise when he walked in. And then if he tells me to take my seat, I have no other choice but to take my seat. And so it speaks, it really reminds all of us of the need to maintain a high degree of humility in the offices that we hold, that irrespective of one's station, we have to show respect. And so rest assured, Mr. Speaker, that you will get my fullest respect, as always, as the Speaker of the House and the one who is in charge of the proceedings of the House. You are the final arbiter on matters relating to the functioning of the House, even if I am considered to be the leader of the House. But you make the decisions and we shall abide by this. Being the speaker is a very difficult job. It's not easy, as many people think, but I believe that you have conducted yourself, and I have no doubt that you will continue to do so with aplomb and, of course, with diligence. And so I wish you God's blessings and guidance. And I think one of the things that the public needs to know is the extent of the responsibility of the Speaker of the House. People think it's only during the sitting of Parliament, but it is a very tough administrative, has many important administrative duties that we have to look at. And this is why I believe that the Parliament will need at some point to consider how it treats the Speaker of the House of Assembly in terms of the support that we provide in carrying out the functions and duties of that very high office. And so I want to congratulate you, and I wish you God's blessings and guidance in this very important office. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the parliamentary opposition, I wish to offer congratulations to you on your elevation or to the office of Speaker of the House of Assembly for another term. Under our system of parliamentary democracy, the Speaker has an extremely important role to play. It is our fervent hope that you will exercise the powers vested in you by the Constitution and the standing orders with objectivity and impartiality. You are the Speaker of the whole House, and as such, you should see all of us in the House as members, irrespective of which side of the House we sit. We look forward to your leadership in this House for the good of all the people of this country. Thank you.
Election of Deputy Speaker.
Yeah, any proposal? Your mic, please. Yes, yeah, okay now. You may proceed.
Excuse me? Yes. We move that Mr. Philip Rowe be elected as the Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the proposal.
Is there any other proposer who wants to propose another person? Okay. Well, then I now declare that Mr. Philip Rowe has been elected Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly. That's unopposed, unopposed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to express my grateful thanks for this high honor that the House has